restaurant was quiet except for the clinking of glasses and the hum of soft jazz in the background. At the corner table sat a man in an expensive suit, tall, composed, and cold as marble. He was about to close a $200 million deal that would make headlines by morning. Everyone in the room knew who he was, Alexander Reed, the youngest billionaire in New York. But as the waiter placed his coffee, a young waitress named Lila Carter stepped forward, trembling slightly, her voice cracking as she whispered, "Sir, please don't sign that paper." The entire room froze. Her interruption would cost her job, but it would save his soul. Alexander Reed was a man who believed money could fix everything: loneliness, betrayal, even time. But lately, even his wealth couldn't silence the echo of his own emptiness. The death of his younger brother, Daniel, 3 years ago had turned him into a man of steel. He stopped feeling, stopped caring, and started building walls, companies, empires, everything except peace. That night, he was finalizing a deal to acquire a small, struggling company. The numbers looked perfect, but what he didn't know was that his buyout would bankrupt hundreds of small-town workers, families who'd built that business from nothing. As he lifted the pen, ready to sign, Lila's trembling voice broke through the polished silence. "Sir, please don't sign that paper." Everyone turned to look. The investors, the lawyers, even the manager who was already rushing to fire her. But Lila stood her ground. Her brown eyes shimmered with something rare, sincerity. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, "but I overheard. My father used to work for that company. They gave him everything when no one else would. If you take them over, it won't just be numbers you'll erase. It'll be lives. People who still believe kindness exists." The manager hissed, "Lila, you're done here." But Alexander raised his hand. His eyes, cold and unreadable, softened, just slightly. "Let her speak," he said quietly. Lila swallowed hard. "You have enough, sir." "But they don't. And I think, maybe you're not the kind of man who takes from those who have nothing left." Her words landed like stones in his chest. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to the man, not the billionaire. He stared at her for a long, silent moment. Then he said, "Deal's off." The investors exploded in disbelief. "You're making a mistake, Alexander." But for the first time in a long time, Alexander smiled, a faint, tired smile. "Maybe I need to make a few." That night, as Lila was escorted out, he stopped her at the door. "You just cost me millions," he said. Her shoulders stiffened, but before she could apologize, he added softly, "And I think you just saved me." Days passed. Lila didn't return to the restaurant. She had been let go quietly. She lived in a small apartment with her mother, struggling to pay rent. Her father had died years ago, leaving behind nothing but his kindness and a heart condition that the hospital bills never forgave. Still, she believed in doing what was right, even if it never paid off. One evening, a knock echoed through her door. When she opened it, she froze. Alexander Reed stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I owed you one," he said simply. She hesitated, but let him in. The billionaire who once commanded boardrooms now sat awkwardly on her torn sofa, glancing at the small photo frames on her table, her parents, her younger self, the life he'd never known. "Why did you do it?" he asked finally. "You didn't know me. You could have lost everything." Lila smiled faintly. "Because my dad taught me something," he said. "When you see someone walking into darkness, don't let them go alone, even if you can only light one match." For the first time, Alexander felt something crack open inside him. He told her about his brother, how Daniel's death had broken him, how he had buried his grief under success. "He believed in people," Alexander whispered. I stopped. Lila looked at him gently. "Maybe it's time you start again." That night, he left her apartment changed. Not entirely, but enough to remember what it felt like to feel. Over the next few weeks, he began to rebuild, not companies, but lives. He canceled harmful mergers, raised wages, and quietly donated to struggling families through an anonymous foundation he created, Project Daniel. And then, one day, a donation envelope arrived at Lila's door. Inside was a letter. "For the match you lit in my darkness." A.R. Years passed. Lila became a counselor for underprivileged youth, helping kids find hope where she once lost it. She never saw Alexander again, or so she thought. One rainy evening, as she was closing her small community center, a luxury car pulled up. A man stepped out, older now, but unmistakable. "Alexander Reed." Still saving lives? He asked with a smile. Lila laughed softly. Trying to. What about you? He handed her an envelope. Expanding your center. Fully funded. Consider it payback. Tears filled her eyes. You already repaid me long ago. He shook his head. You taught me that real wealth isn't in what we keep. It's in what we give. The two stood in silence, the rain tapping gently around them. For a moment, time folded. The billionaire and the waitress, two souls once lost in their own storms, now bound by a single act of compassion that changed everything. As Alexander drove away, he looked in the mirror and saw something he hadn't seen in years, peace. And Lila? She smiled through tears, whispering to the sky, Dad, the match is still burning. Moral of the story. A single act of kindness may seem small, but it has the power to rewrite destinies and heal even the richest of broken hearts.